Curt Cignetti needs to be stopped.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth, which returns this Saturday. Farmageddon is happening, and guess what? We're getting ready for that matchup on today's show after I talk about Indiana's pretty famous, infamous head coach, however you want to see it. Today's show brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. This is just continuing to snowball in the wrong direction. And there are a couple of things that annoy me about what Curt Cignetti said at Big Ten Media Days when I asked him about canceling a series with Virginia, and then what has happened after the fact and all the commentary that's gone on. And my annoyance mostly comes back to Curt Cignetti, which isn't where it actually was before, because Cignetti had the opportunity to rightfully criticize an aspect of SEC scheduling that does give them an advantage over the rest of college football, particularly the Big Ten, who is much more their equal than everybody else. And that's that right before rivalry week, when you're in the thick of a playoff hunt, SEC teams all over the conference are getting de facto buys. They get to rest their guys for a half. They're playing FCS games at that point. I will never advocate for removing FCS games from team schedules. I will forever, until it is removed, advocate for them not being played when you are in the thick of a playoff and conference championship race. I cannot possibly get behind that. And Cignetti could have made that criticism. He would have been right. And look, he's not a guy that cares much about the opinions of other people. He would not be taking as much heat as he has over the last several weeks and will continue to do so going forward if he had just went in that direction. But Indiana's non-conference for the next 5 years has been solidified. 2025, we know. Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. 2026, Howard, Colorado State, and Western Kentucky. At least it's a Conference USA and Mountain West team, I guess. 2027, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, UMass. 2028, Austin Peay, the Governors. Miami of Ohio, Eastern Michigan. 2029, Ball State, Eastern Illinois, Western Kentucky. Nobody wins in this world. Nobody does. Because Indiana fans get to see wins. Are they all going to stay till the fourth quarter? Is it going to be a day they'll remember for the rest of their lives? I suppose the people generating revenue at Indiana University are going to like that they're getting victories. Curt Cignetti will have more job security because he'll have more wins. The disappointing thing is if two of those games every year remain, but you just put in a Power 4 opponent each year, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. Indiana wouldn't be receiving so much deserved criticism for what their schedule looks like in the coming years. My criticism of the SEC scheduling is there haven't been as many road games as in the past. Seems like there are always a lot of neutral site games out there that they like to play. Or, Georgia will play a neutral site game like they did against Oregon a couple of years ago in Atlanta. Okay. It's neutral-ish. Like, when was the last time Alabama came to the West Coast? Give me an Alabama USC that's played in Los Angeles and Tuscaloosa in a home-and-home. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see the conferences have challenges the way they do in college basketball so that we could see the best teams from the prior year going into the next season play in the non-conference slate. That makes college football a better sport. But the disappointing point that Cignetti missed an opportunity to make a completely fair criticism of the SEC and the way that they schedule their games. He missed the point entirely, of course, and didn't even get to the point because the contention, at least in my book, from where I'm coming from, has never been the SEC doesn't have quality non-conference games. No, they have plenty of those. It's just that they have one fewer conference game than everybody else, and that results in fewer interesting games. And Indiana then countered with, we're going to make all of our non-conference games uninteresting. The second reason that this is disappointing is because Indiana, in 1 year, they were the story of the year in college football last season. Remember, they weren't just beating teams. I know their schedule wasn't as hard as some of the others in the Big Ten, but their average margin of victory was comparable against their schedule to what 2023 Michigan did, who's also been in the news recently. I'm not diving into all of that. We've talked about it enough. So Indiana was the story of the year. They have done a complete and total 180, even more than some of the other dramatic changes we've seen in programs in recent years. Like Colorado was suddenly the biggest story. They faded. And they were good last year, and they'll be okay this year, and then could be really good next year, I think, depending on what happens at quarterback. And yeah, Colorado has taken longer to ascend to the number of wins that Indiana had last year. Colorado's won 13 games in 2 years under Deion Sanders. Curt Cignetti won 11 in his first, and he's in a better conference. So the changing of Indiana's brand into a premier one set up an opportunity for them to suddenly play games that their fans, or people like me that are fans of the sport and just want to see good teams play on the field in the non-conference slate in games that really matter and have real stakes every year, that opportunity is now just gone by the wayside. Because you're taking a really interesting brand that is trying to ascend to the top of college football, or closer to it, certainly than it ever has been before, with a guy who is polarizing, interesting, going to speak his mind. He draws a crowd, not unlike Deion Sanders, frankly. He's got people who love him. He's got people who hate him. And guess what? Those sorts of guys are good for the sport. The missed opportunity for Indiana to go out and play some marquee non-conference games, it doesn't have to be against Georgia, Alabama, Miami, Clemson. But you know one of my favorite non-conference games that I'm going to talk about later this week on the show that's flying under, I think, plenty of radars out there in the college football world? Auburn and Baylor. Heck, Auburn and Cal the last 2 years. One game at Berkeley, one game at Jordan-Hare. They were outstanding games. That's all I want, is go play an opponent who you might be favored against, but is still theoretically capable of challenging you. Auburn was a 12.5-point favorite last year against Cal. They lost. They were a 5.5-point favorite the year before. They almost won. Or Cal almost won that year. Like, they were good competitive games. And it's the principle that I object to. Because Power 4 teams, as Curt Cignetti shows you, can change their identity, trajectory, and program caliber really quickly in today's world of college football. And so the opportunity, there is just a huge missed opportunity there for Indiana to play some really cool games. And now this stain is going to be attached to their brand because Curt Cignetti has doubled down on it, and because their schedule is so horrible. They're always going to have to push back against that narrative, but you don't play any marquee non-conference games. And no one cares about Indiana for the first 3 weeks of the season. That is why Curt Cignetti needs to have someone change his mind. I doubt that's going to happen. It's almost like teams shouldn't control their non-conference schedules. I wonder if anyone suggested that before. Makes you wonder. I wonder about Farmageddon and how much fun we're going to have this week. You're going to be ready for that game by the time you're done listening to this show. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That is where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. If you have that one financial goal you've been wanting to get towards for a very long time, guess what? Monarch is here to help you get there. They are an all-encompassing tool that allows you to get on a better financial path. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. This episode also brought to you by our friends at OpenPhone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. You thought about it? If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep your personal and business calls separate? OpenPhone solves that instantly. And the AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses already trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. That's openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. Week 0 doesn't always deliver a gem of a matchup like it does this year, but Farmageddon in Ireland is what we've got on tap. Beer pun intended. Christian Rauh of Locked On Kansas State is here. Nick Marovets of Locked On Cyclones as well. Fellas, I want to start before we get into all the details of the game. This is a Big 12 conference game in week 1. It is not overstating things to say the winner of this one could wind up have it be the difference in them making the Big 12 championship game when the season comes to a close. I think these are a couple of contenders in the Big 12. Most other people do as well. You guys have at it, though. Who needs this more?
I think Kansas State does, because Iowa State's we're good. We can take this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Kansas State's got ways to go.
You know what? Sure, I'll take the bait here. And I will say Kansas State needs it more because Iowa State is going to lose more than 2-3 games in conference. So they're not going to be in the conversation for Arlington when it's all said and done. If Kansas State loses this game, they might be out of consideration because they have a tough schedule. But yeah, I'll say they need it more because the roster is good enough to get to the Big 12 championship. Iowa State, I don't know. You seen those wide receivers, Nick? Let's not get that far.
Yeah, I was going the other way. I think that Iowa State's going to win every game. So if they lose this one, it's like it's not the end of the world. No, I think that Iowa State's in a really good spot, win or lose. But I do think that this game is one of the most important on Iowa State's schedule. I kind of broke down some of the most important games earlier this year. And this one, it's hard to overstate. Like this is the big game, start of the season, overseas, conference opponent, rivalry, like everything about this game points to being one of the biggest, not only in the Big 12, but I think in college football all year long. And so it's exciting, but also a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you, Nick, on that portion. When it comes to the rivalry of the Big 12 and of Farmageddon just as a whole, it's one of the greatest rivalries in sports and one that's not talked about enough. 118 games this matchup has played. They're 54-50-4. Iowa State does have the lead, but just 4 games. But this is one of those rivalries that you can never expect who's going to win this game. Now, I will say Iowa State's won 3 of the last 4. That doesn't shake me and worry about me one bit whatsoever. What does mess with me, Nick, is Brett Yormark is willing to make this rivalry unprotected after 2027. That's what grinds my gears, and that's what we need to discuss right off the bat.
Oh, that's not okay. That's not okay. That's like doing away with Kansas, Missouri, which is on the schedule this year for those teams in a non-conference bout, and that's good and fun. But let me throw another big picture question at you guys. Which team has to win this game in order to get into the playoff?
Nick, you want to go first?
I struggle to really wrap my head around two teams from the Big 12 making the 12-team playoff. And I know that is like probably not the right thing to say here. I completely get it. We're both, from the Big 12. It's just hard for me to really see a reality where that happens. So I think it's going to come down to making the Big 12 championship game. If one of these teams were to be the second team in, I think it has to be Iowa State just based on the way their schedule lays out. Christian, I haven't really broken down Kansas State's, but I like Iowa State's. I do like the win over, obviously, granted this has to actually play out, but the potential win over Arizona State, I think, would be a real resume builder. BYU in there as well, depending on how Bear Bachmeier does. A couple other top-tier opponents, Kansas State being one of them. I think that Iowa State would probably need this win to bump themselves up in there. I just don't know if Kansas State, do they have the resume to get that done? I don't know.
The question the question that this really comes down to, a different way to phrase it, which of these teams can win this game and go 11-1? I think 11-1 in the Big 12 or ACC gets in every single time. I do. With SMU getting in last year, which I agreed with, by the way, and Indiana as well, 11-1 Power 4, based on the first year of evidence the committee gave us, I think that gets a second Big 12 team in. I think the best 10-2 shot in the league is Baylor or Oklahoma State with their non-conference slates. But Christian, if Kansas State wins this game, are you just going to hop on the wagon and say, you know what, forget the Big 12 championship game. We're going 11-1 or 12-0 and making the playoff?
As much as I'd love to say that, no, because the goal is to get to Arlington. The goal is to fight for Dr. Pepper, all 23 flavors, whatever the case that may be, Spencer. That is the goal in this one. And the reason behind it is because you're guaranteed a bid if you win in Arlington. Now, you can consider potentially a 50-50 shot of if you lose in Arlington, you might still be an at-large bid, or maybe even 75-25. Because unlike Nick, and I can tell, Nick, that Iowa State doesn't have a baseball team because you're giving me meatballs in this one. You're throwing straight softballs at me on this conversation. You are drinking the wrong Kool-Aid. You think Iowa State's going to be 12-0, but don't believe that there's going to be two Big 12 teams in the college football playoffs this year.
Well, Iowa State would be the first one, yeah.
For you, sir, I say nay. There is going to be two teams in the Big 12 this year. I know parity is crazy. I know it's one of the most dog-eat-dog conferences in all of college football, but it's going to happen. So that's why I think making it to Arlington is the goal, because both teams, and we saw it last year as well, if you make it to the conference championship and you're in position, if you're in one of those top 12 spots or top 11 plus whatever the case may be, and you make it to a conference championship and you lose, you're not taken away from that spot. We saw what happened with Clemson, right? So I think if you make it to Arlington, if you're in a good position to do so, which in my opinion is at least 7-2 in the Big 12 conference, maybe with some tiebreakers, I think you're fine. There's going to be two teams in the Big 12 this year. Book it.
Let's start pivoting towards the game, and you're both going to answer this question whether you want to or not. I think it'll go over fine, but I say or not because this is my show. So anyway, Nick, Iowa State wins this game if they what?
For one, we don't turn it over. I think we got to keep the ball in our own hands. But two, I think if they can settle in offensively, defensively, we're going to be just fine. We have so many talented and the depth at linebacker. I'm not concerned about linebacker. Defensive line, the depth chart just came out, and I was blown away. I think that's a brilliant plan what they're cooking up over there as far as guys at positions. And the secondary is something that a lot of people are concerned about. I don't really see it. I'm not going to lie. I think that there's plenty of talent there as well. I'm not too worried about the defensive side of the ball, but it's hard to ignore the elephant in the room of no Higgins or Knoll. And so who is going to get that ball? Is it going to be Bramer? Is it going to be Burkle? Is it going to be out of the backfield? Is it going to be Hansen or Sama? Like, who steps up at the wide receiver position? We have a lot of question marks, I think, on the offensive side. And I've said before, I believe it was on a Farmageddon Friday, that we need to allow the offense time to find their identity in this game. This is week 0. This is not week 2, week 3, week 10. We haven't figured it out yet. I mean, we've got some fall camp under our belt, but we have to stay in this long enough to allow the offense to identify what they can do well against, obviously, Kansas State, but as a unit. And I think they'll be able to hang if they can get that done.
Christian, Kansas State wins this game if they do what?
Well, Nick said he has a couple questions. He's got 167 of them, 167 receptions. He has to find a way to replace just on Higgins and Noel alone. So if you can make sure that there's no shock factor coming into play by some of these new wide receivers that Iowa State's coming into play, and we can prove that it was the receivers that made Rocco Becht as good as he was, not actually Rocco Becht being as good as he is, that is the number one key. I think wide receivers versus Kansas State secondary will be the key play in this one because, look, I know you said that some people think the same something about Iowa State secondary. I'm not afraid to call this out. I think there are some valid concerns for Kansas State secondary. I think it's probably the most concerning group, at least for being the most unproven heading into the 0 matchup. You let go of Jacob Parrish to the NFL, Marquise Siegel to the NFL. The only returning player in the secondary of Kansas State last year that had any type of production, VJ Payne, who's an absolute dog, might I add. But there's some transfers, there's some exciting pieces, and there's some young pieces that should be able to get the job done as long as they don't let any of these wide receivers that came over in the portal from Iowa State that are trying to fill some big shoes that are certainly sitting with the Houston Texans right now. I think they'll be just fine.
This must be how Judge Judy has felt for years, just sitting there and they're sparring and back and forth like, oh, whoa, because I heard a shot at Iowa State's quarterback in there, and when we return, we're going to hash that out because that is what Judge Judy would do. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in the game. So if you go into an NFL matchup this year and you say, hey, I think Joe Burrow's popping off today, or I think Saquon Barkley is going to get held in check, you go look at their total and you take them over, under, depending on how you're feeling. You pick at least 2 or maybe more stat projections for players, and if you're right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. And the flex play option, total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game. This episode also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. August 26th is around the corner, and that is FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel's giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. You can do it for college football too. National title odds, conference title odds. You could bet on Farmageddon this week. That line's available. Kansas State about a field goal favorite. If you like the Wildcats, it's right there at FanDuel.com. If you think the Cyclones are winning outright, well, then Iowa State +3 is pretty good value there. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Let's talk quarterbacks in Farmageddon this week. Christian, I'll allow you to pick up where you left off, taking not so thinly veiled shots at Rocco Becht. Do you not believe in a guy who's starting for the 17th season with the Cyclones this fall? What's your reservation here? We got a track record.
17? Is that what? Wait, 17?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it was a natural transition. It was just, Brock Purdy and, the guy in the middle and then Rocco Becht. And that's all
we don't talk about him.
That's all there's ever been. By the way, Aaron Kraft is still the point guard at Ohio State. Is he not? Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I think he is. Hey, look, when you're talking about quarterbacks who have been there for a long time, the Big 12 does have that. I'm pretty sure they should be sponsored by the AARP. Cam Rising, is he still a quarterback? Pretty sure he's still in the availability too for Utah. But hey, look, when it comes to Rocco Becht, when it comes to him, if it's not week 0, I might give him his flowers. But heading into this season, I think there is a solid narrative that needs to be answered here. Is he a good quarterback, and is he the reason that Iowa State gets to share the Pop-Tart championship with Kansas State, the only 2 Pop-Tart champions, might I add you? We have the better flavor. Don't worry about that. Yeah. Is the reason is because of Higgins and Noel. Now you are going into a brand new season with an untested wide receiver group, and For the record, that's what Kansas State had to do last year. And Nick, before you even get the opportunity to speak your words, let me give you a little 8 Mile. Let me go a little bit, back it up here, and I'm going to tell you everything that's wrong with Avery Johnson before you have even a chance to rap, before I hand you the mic, buddy. Because what is going on with this is Avery Johnson did have some issues last year. There's no doubt about it. He was inconsistent. In the second half of the season, he was injured. He wasn't as 100% as he should, especially after that Colorado game. But he still found a way to take that team 7-1 at the beginning of the season with a subpar wide receiver group. Can Rocco Becht do that? And if so, then maybe I'll change my tune. But until then, I'm going to call Rocco Becht little brother.
Nick, are you gonna let him talk about your quarterback that way, even though he was willing to tacitly admit that Avery Johnson might live in a trailer with his mom?
Yeah, that came out of nowhere
spaghetti.
at the end there. Jiminy creaminy.
Nick, the floor is yours. Yeah, go ahead.
The angle I was gonna take here is we'll have to wait another couple of years probably to find out if Rocco is a good quarterback or not, because the tight ends are unbelievable this year, as I mentioned, and the wide receivers have unlimited potential as well. But now I guess I gotta defend the guy because you're taking direct shots at him.
Also, what do you mean another couple? Does he have more eligibility?
There's no way.
I think he has one more. I think he's got one more. Yeah.
There's
so.
no way.
Oh, that would be
no
okay.
way.
All right, Nick, continue. I'm gonna dive into that.
You want to double check on that for me? That'd be great, because it does feel like it's been about 17 years. Nonetheless, Rocco, yes, there have been some turnover potential issues where we could have cleaned those up a little bit. But I think a lot of people sleep on his running ability, and we've talked about Avery Johnson and how fast he is this offseason. So I know that kind of goes both ways. But Rocco really capitalized last season, was able to extend some drives, was able to cut third and longs, down to a third and manageable dive in against UCF. I think his legs really elevate him to a next level quarterback. And I don't really think he needs a whole ton of explaining, because I genuinely do think that the tight ends are going to be a major part of this offense, whether it's, how many are out there, if it's 2, 3, 4, or 5. Doesn't really matter. I think they're going to be a major force for this offense.
That is redshirt junior quarterback Rocco Becht you're talking about, by the way. Your instinct there was correct, Nicholas. This might not be the last year of Rocco Becht and Matt Campbell. That's why he's the Cyclones guy. I just wanted to give him his flowers for that.
Hang on a second, Nick. You keep saying this word "good tight end group," and I don't think you know what that means. Okay, Princess Bride, their shout out.
It was my dad's favorite movie. I got that one right away.
It's a great movie. I love
Inconceivable.
it. Absolutely. Nick, I got to ask you a question. Your tight end group, you say it's so good. Okay, well, let me put you on the spot. How many of your tight end groups last year are returning? How many of your tight end groups led the country in red zone touchdowns? Let me tell you the answer. It's 0, because Kansas State did, and it's 4 tight ends that they had last year, and they led the country in red zone touchdowns with 13. Oh, and by the way,
so really that was a rhetorical question?
Yeah.
Let me just add you a link. Yeah. It was great. I don't think you know what that means. Absolutely. No. Your tight end group is not as good as what Kansas State has, and your wide receiver group is nowhere close to what it is with the size that Kansas State brought in. Oh, and might I raise you a Dylan Edwards, one of the most electric players in all of college football, not just the Big 12. So good luck, buddy. But Rocco Becht, it's just not going to happen.
Spencer, I'd like to just interject here. We have done Farmageddon Fridays all off season long. It's been cordial. It's been friendly. We've had fun.
It's game
and
week,
I did not
baby.
expect to come on here. I should have seen this coming. I really should have. I did not come prepared to directly attack Kansas State, but I can defend Iowa State.
You didn't have your Princess Bride lines ready to go and retort to Christian's assault?
I feel like I'm being attacked by the man-eating rats right now. Like this
How
is
many
unreal.
one-score wins did you guys win last year? Is that going to happen again? 12-0?
Yeah, the ball bounces the way of the better team for sure. When you talk about the tight ends, it's hard to ignore that how many guys were injured last year for Iowa State, or the fact that Cooper Alexander, that redshirt freshman that was definitely banged up last season, is going to come onto the scene and look like either Rob Gronkowski or Travis Kelce, whichever one's your favorite. You talk about the running backs, like Carson Hansen is a freight train that has legs. Abu Sama has a gold spin move on College Football 26 for a reason. Like you want to talk about the top end talent that Iowa State has, you can go position by position, and it's just plentiful. So I don't have enough to fire back at Kansas State, but I can tell you why Iowa State's just fine.
All right. Let's let's wrap this with your guys' game predictions this week. This is the first. Record predictions have been rolling along this channel since early July, and I enjoy it tremendously. But the first game prediction of the year, I'm saving mine for later in the week. I need to let this entire conversation marinate in my head for a little while and figure out where I stand. Like, it's got to, this is a crock pot sort of deal, right? This is not a microwave take I'm coming up with. You guys, of course, have discussed this game more than a few times. So, Nick, I'm going to go to you first. Does Iowa State win the game on Saturday in Ireland? And we're playing games overseas for reasons nobody understands. Go ahead.
Shocker, yes, Iowa State wins. Just to kind of pitch my case to you, Spencer, Iowa State has a lot of guys returning from injury. That is the name of the game with this team. Do not sleep on them. Don't even really worry about what happened last season, because this is a totally new team with basically the same guys. It's a wild situation where you didn't bring in a ton of transfers and you still got significantly better. You definitely brought in some good transfers, though. I think my score prediction is going to be Iowa State wins it 31. Let's go 20. 31-20. I'm okay with that.
Listen to that, Christian. He's got your Wildcats with Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards and everybody else that you like going into this year, losing by 11 points as a favorite on Saturday. What do you say to that?
Yeah, that'd be the biggest score margin since 2021 when Iowa State won.
This game is always close.
It is a very close game. The last 3 games have been scored by, settled by 1 score or less. Look, Kansas State's going to win this football game. I think that Matt Wells is going to really come back in his own. I know that he doesn't have this good feeling of being in the Big 12, especially Texas Tech fans feel the same way about Matt Wells. They feel, they screech up and they hide in a corner, but that's not the case right now as the offensive coordinator. The trust he has with Avery Johnson is great. The relationship's great. The fact that they have structure and consistency this offseason and finally just know that he's the one calling the plays. We kind of got a taste of it in the Rate Bowl against Rutgers this past season. I do like where they're heading. I'm not going to go 11 points here because I think it's going to be a close game. I think Kansas State takes the cake here, but I'm going to say it's a single score game. So consider me, let's make it even just basically like it was last year. I'm going to think it's a high-scoring game. I think you take the over in this one. The weather's supposed to be beautiful in Ireland, something that shouldn't
20
be
degrees Celsius.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And that's, about Celsius. Do the math. If you don't, use a calculator. But either way, I'm going to go 30-23 Kansas State. That's what I'm going.
I don't hate it.
You could also use Google it to just, how many degrees, and it'd be a lot easier. I don't even know. I don't even remember what the math calculation is for Celsius.
It's got a 9/16, I think.
No, it has a 5/9, doesn't it?
Oh, that's
Isn't it
what
like
it is.
5/9
right.
plus. Then there's 32. It's like 5/9 plus 32.
Come on,
I think
boys. It's Fahrenheit minus 32 degrees times 5/9. Get it right.
Yeah, top 5 most searched terms in Nick Marovets.
Listen to the
Thanks, F Google. To C conversion. That's what it is.
Yeah, F to C conversion.
Formula.
By the way,
right, man.
I would just like to point out to wrap today's show, listen to this nerd that knows the Fahrenheit to Celsius calculation off the top of his head.
Yeah.
That's Christian Rauh of Locked On Kansas State for you, everybody. Nick Marovets, Locked On Cyclones. Great stuff, guys. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.